Disappeared. Seems like we have a little group today. So let's let the chant bring us into meditation. That is okay. One, two, three. So we all come downstairs. We'll start on time today, sort of. We're always 15 minutes late. Karen's going to sing some of those verses from the Kundalini Stavaha, helps invoke that dimension of our own experience.
Yano Dharani Kshani Adorani Vedadi Bijadi Ma Nityam Chetasi Bhavyate Bhuvikada Sangate Sancharini Mahapatu Priyata Zapavadapram Sangataye Shridhara Tatritvam Svayamari Deva Vanita Diram Didinam Pashum Rakta Pamruta Chandrika Lipimayi Sarpa Krutir Nidrita Chakrat Surma Samashrita Bhagavati Tvama Samalokaya Mama Kanda Kukanda Dosha Charitam Vedadi Karyanvitam Svapa Swamala Chandra Koti Kirane Nityam Shariram Kuru Siddharti Nijadosha Vitsalakatir Vyajate Vidyadiya Kundala Kula Marga Mukhanagari Maya Kumarga Shriya Yadevam Bhajati Prabhata Samayi Madhyana Kale Tava Nityam Yakula Kundali Japapadam Pujam Sasido Bhave.
So we've been focusing a lot on embodiment, huh? And been understanding different ways of experiencing and understanding this process of embodiment of awareness. Is actually the embodiment of light and energy, spaciousness, and the great affection. And I'm going to pick up where we were at last week again with focusing again on the Kundalini. There's 3 papers I asked you guys to read, and I'm focus on the one called The Luminous Kundalini as the expanding luminous field of awareness bringing forth sublimation. So I've been focusing, understanding the power of this Kundalini, which is the manifestation of primordial awareness, manifesting in us in a very direct and very experiential, felt sense way of embodying this awareness, this knowingness, this spacious knowingness, this energy, this Shakti, this Chi, different words, and actually manifesting, creating the body of light in this process. And embodying, as we embody this light, we're also embodied by the light, huh? I'm going to pick up some of the same themes again today. We're going to go back to the navel chakra, that's center of the body. And then what happens is the energy moves and expands through that. And what happens is it penetrates into the doorway, that little doorway right here, to the heart, opens that up. And that center, and then up to the throat, palate, opening that, on the eyes, top of the head, the channels from the heart, the Gayatri channels coming to the eyes that actually help us see the light, not simply with third eye, but with our regular eyes. The light, seeing the light. And this is in all the different traditions. It goes by different names. We're focusing a lot on the process of sublimation. And here sublimation doesn't mean, it's a process of bringing forth the body of light and the process of transforming energy and affects and drives and intensities and the transmutation of this subtle body energy into this luminous embodiment of the body of light. And the practice of sublimation sometimes is little understood in the West and even certain forms of Eastern thinking, because for many it means foreclosure. Sublimation means the foreclosure or the closing the door. And actually it's quite the opposite. It's linking these primal drives in us, these intensities in us, the elements in us, and linking through awareness. The alchemical process is actually begun and used to integrate and bring together primal states, which are the very force, the power for actually helping bring forth the body of light. Say yes if that's making sense for you all. So we're going to come at this again today, and we'll be also using a kind of a psychoanalytic frame, because it's remarkably parallel. So I'm going to jump a few pages where we read last time. And before bringing forth luminosity, the metabolization of the energy, from energy to light. First it feels like energy, and then it becomes light. If you've even just been Mr. Mas, from a Qigong point of view, for years he would talk about the energy, right? And now he's talking about the light, because there's a gradual transformation of refinement. What appears as energy, what feels as energy, in fact begins to manifest as light in that process. We also spoke about the column of light, and the column of light has different formulations as it grounds the earth and the sky through the heart. It's a point of balance. We also just described last week how as the column of light arises in our bodies, it creates both the vertical dimension of this sphere, SPH of light and energy, and also the horizontal. They actually support each other. And in that way, resonance starts becoming very powerful. Resonance, in the maturely formed Kundalini experience, resonance becomes the vehicle of activation and sustaining in a non-climactic way. We also focused a good bit on object instinct and like psychoanalytically, the Freudian center, so to speak, below the navel, and we looked at the vicissitudes and the mixture of sexuality, and we'll maybe touch that again next week. Sexuality and the energy and the light, and the dissolving of some of the connections, some of the early connections of sexual energy with certain type of object relational configurations as the energy moves through that and starts to come through the navel. We also spoke about the vortexual spiral. It spirals in our bodies. We I touched on the whole issue of awakening awareness and the field phenomena that comes with that. As awakened awareness comes, we start actually experiencing our awareness of field. So now we're going to go back to this center. Within the lower center of human beings, there's this fusion, going back to the lower center just briefly, of the sexual instinctive energy, and also fire, rage is also there, anger and rage, the Freudian favorites. And I mentioned how even there's some studies now with the neurons on these centers where you can, one way, it creates the animals copulating, and you focus the light another way on it, and it creates savagery, aggression. And actually following Freud's whole on formulation development, again, there's a parallel between Freud's thinking and the rising of the Kundalini, the arising of the energy, and the use of the arising of the awareness as a way of metabolizing these primordial energies, linking them, that you have a much more refined way of perceiving and being in this world. I'm going back to the field again. I'm trying to catch where we're at. So when awareness is awakened, there's this fourth dimension which is activated within human beings, and this is the awareness field, which is beginning to expand and infuse the psychic soma continuum. The Kundalini, to use that metaphor, expands. And the understanding of the Kundalini only as physical energy is at times misleading and limiting. It is the field, ultimately it is the field unfolding and self-manifesting. Ultimately, we call the Kundalini as a self-manifestation, the field of primordial awareness in us as us, infusing our mind, infusing our body, and also bringing forth our subjectivity, which is awareness itself of its own self, in a highly sustained, ongoing, continuous fashion, not so sporadic. Say yes if that makes sense. That is what this deal is there. So Kundalini is a metaphor for consciousness in this embodying process, which involves sublimation and bringing forth the light. In the beginning of this awakening process, the expression of the Kundalini or field's expansion may be felt as energy, and sometimes we start feeling the energy, and it pulsates, it expands, and we jerk around, and then it contracts, and it expands. It literally, you feel the pulsation. And sometimes this pulsation can feel like discharging. You with me? And we can discharge for a while with it. But as it happens, as it naturally unfolds, the discharging quality, the climactic-like quality, starts to drop away, and the pulsation is actually stretching the container, and also your breathing starts to change. And from rather having climactic-like experiences, which can be lots of fun, you start having a pranic ionic breath that's very subtle, very paced, like this, and is metabolizing the experience. So the breath becomes part of the metabolization of the experience, or the breath is a manifestation of the awareness metabolizing of that energy. That's why eventually, if you've done this for a while, the kriyas, as they call, the pulsations, the spinnings, the leapings, the fallings, all that stuff begins to stop, right? And and it begins to stop because now your body is prepared to hold this process. That's when the kriyas also disappear if you're not doing anything. And so the Kundalini does what? She goes back to sleep. She curls back up. You say, what was that? Because practice is really, really helpful. And the practice, the most powerful practice, is attuning yourself to the energy in your body and attuning yourself to the energy and the field in other humans' bodies. It is that relational. The process is that relational. You can also do mantras, and you can also invoke texts and chanting and all the other panoply of practices. But the most direct practice that is always with you is being in your embodiment and in the circumstances. Intensity. The Kundalini loves intensity. A really intense day, right? And the energy, if it's attuned, becomes stronger and more stable through intensity. This is not the cool lake metaphor. It's not the cool lake metaphor. In some traditions, some Buddhist traditions, if you have this going on, they send you and you sit under a waterfall to cool it out, to put it back to sleep. Totally valid, but this is a fast way. Because it's alive as awareness is alive. And it's intense as awareness is intense. It is both space, but it's space that vibrates, pulsates, creates, and manifests everything and anything. It manifests us and brings forth the potential. In the Dharmakaya, which is the land of potential, everything's in the land of potential, in potentiality. It's virtuality. It is virtuality, but it's there in potentiality. And then it begins to manifest itself, coming into pulsation and swirling and the energetic forces. And those forces start to manifest worlds and bodies and cars and us. And in that manifestation, it's also manifesting directly within us its own self, bringing its own self to fruition as our own awareness, as our own awareness. The same little awareness that I'm talking to you from and you're looking at me from is the awareness that is awareness itself. Primordial awareness manifesting in us in time and beyond time is what the Kundalini is manifesting. Say yes if that's making sense to you. So, as transmutation unfolds, the energetic dimensions reveals, it's a self-revelation experience, its innermost luminosity and its radiance. So, it is openness, it is spaciousness, you could say it's even emptiness, but it is radiance. Emptiness is incomplete. It's not the whole story. It is simply not the whole story of primordial awareness. The Kundalini, the felt sense of the Kundalini, is the experience of radiance, manifesting itself in your body. And as it manifests itself in your body and manifests itself in the circumstances around you, then you begin to see, through that self-manifestation, the light in the phenomena around you, naturally and without effort. Say yes if that makes sense to you. Yes. So let's step one more step. So the radiance, the Kundalini is ultimately about radiance. The same thing in Qigong, certain forms of Qigong. Qigong looks like energy, sounds like energy initially, but as it moves ahead, Qigong is working with light and radiance. The teachers may not tell you that initially, but as it unfolds, the language changes to light. Now, back to the sexual energy in Kundalini. We went about this a lot last time. We'll touch it a little bit today, then we'll move on. The dramatic emphasized energy in the pelvic bowl, there's a great intensification of the energy because of the conjunctio of the sexual energy and the Kundalini, or the awareness field, expanding and connecting to the sexual centers. So as the energy as the light expands to us, it activates all the centers, a lot of these centers, and it activates the nadis and the subtle energy centers, So it's awakening all these centers. Who awakens awareness? Awareness awakens awareness in us itself. And to have some sense of that and participatoriness is really, really useful. There's a mutual contact and mutual infusion. This intensification can greatly organize the personality and even create fixations wherein the field of the sexual energy and desire for the object are compelling and compulsive. So this happens in this phase a lot. A lot of fixation is created there and can cause sometimes havoc in situations and communities and teachers and things like that. So the Kundalini, though, is not essentially sexual energy, but one of the first opening in the Muladhara chakra, this center right here, right back there, where the pons of Venus are in women. That's the power opens up the energy. And so initially there's intense sexual energy and vibrant sexual energy. And that is actually part and parcel of the unfolding process. So when people try and just cut all that off, it does work. It does stop. And the actual power of the penetration, the penetrating all these chakras, also can stop. You follow what I'm saying there? So the Kundalini is not essentially sexual energy, but it's the awareness field manifesting in various locations within the human body. When it opens up here, all these nectarian states start arising for us. It opens up here, the heart drops. And this is for ordinary people. So it's so great. This is democracy. This is democracy in action, right? And to have the awakening and the transmission of energy from from great masters and traditions, and that awakens in you, it also allows from you to have people have the same awakening through you, right? It's not like it is the same energy coming through us, right? That is democracy. Or as Earl P. Long said in Louisiana, the governor of Louisiana, a chicken in every person's pot. You follow what I mean, right? I'm serious. I'm serious. In the very beginning days of Swami Muktananda, everyone gave Shaktipat. Every center, it's your turn. Actually, we still do that here, right? So it was understood that Shaktipat is a cultural experience, a relational cultural experience from a lineage to those who participate in it, you know? It does take some understanding. It does take some understanding, though, to hold it, because it easily, as it always does, makes fools out of lots of people. Called ha ha ha. This is true. The very intensity of the energy field facilitates the movement of the field, both in the extension to the earth element, which creates the grounding of the column, and also creates the sense of not being so fragile. Comprend? A lot of people have this openness, but they're very fragile. They're constantly intruded upon by energy. So the connection of the column into the earth helps that earth element permeate our body more, including on the surface of the energy body. Say yes if that's making sense. Which creates the grounding of the column and the extension of the field, both under an ascending column of energy becoming light and a horizontal resonance and extension into the immediacy of the world. So the source is both the earth and sky meeting, and the source is also each other. So Swami Muktananda would always say, I welcome you all with love, and this is the greatest practice for me, right? And he would say, see God in each other. For him, God wasn't an entity, right? Either a big one or a little one. God was this vast experience of the light consciousness itself, in everything, in every place, and everywhere. So now we go to the Dantian, this little doorway here. This is sometimes a problem, the Dantian. Dantian? It's the navel, is about 3 inches below the navel. You got to put your hands there.
2 fingers.
Huh?
2 fingers.
2, okay, great. We'll go for 2. Okay. The dilemma is that the conjunction, this union, must move through the Dantian and through the navel area into the solar plexus. And this expansion can be sporadic and intense. And this expansion can be blocked both by repression, dissociation, foreclosure, as well as can also be blocked by an unbound impulsiveness that highly accentuates the narcissistic narrative. Which means as one starts to feel that opening, and it starts the opening, rather than being able to hold it, you go into a narrative. you go into fantasy and you fall into erotic mania in your mind. But it's sidetracked. It is sidetracked into fantasy. You with me? And the fantasy is so strong that the fantasy itself becomes an internalized object relationship that has you. And it is so powerful that the life around you pales. And sensuality becomes simply an internal, mentalistic, pictorial life. And you think it's the best. But it's a solipsistic life. And this is a drama. So as we've been going through, each of the movements of the Kundalini have a lot of vicissitudes to it, right? You guys making sense? It's freeing, but it's also captivating. Okay? The expansion can be blocked by dissociativeness or this unbound impulsiveness and highly accentuates the sexual and narcissistic narrative, especially in phantasmagoria. So both containment, so one of the tensions is trying to contain it, and contraction can sometimes be too much and too overwhelming. And sometimes the contractions are arising naturally by the thing. The energy is expanding us and it's contracting back and forth. But to just to go with it and give time for it to take place is really important. If it really takes time, so sometimes just giving yourself over for hours in a room, cultivating it, living with it, and slowly but surely it unwraps you. There's an unwrapping that takes place. It unwraps us, opens us. It's not all a fun story. And then the light begins to infuse the flesh. Say yes if that's making sense. So sometimes you just find yourself moving, just moving around. Sometimes you find yourself bowing. People go through all sorts of careers, all sorts of experiences. Jumping, think you're going to fly. Because you feel the freedom of space. Throughout the entire Kundalini thing as it opens, there's more and more space. The density of our body, the density of the mind, the density is being dissolved. But you have to leave upstairs and go downstairs. You have to enter your body. And you do not want to be witnessing it from afar in your mind. You want to bring your mind down into the intensity. You want to bring your mind down into the experience. The Gurdwara Tantra is on the same thing. Bring your mind down into the body, as all this unfolds. Say yes if this is making sense to you. So, almost done, okay. Then this can create difficulties for the opening of the doorway and entering the doorway of the navel. So really some of the Hatha Yoga postures, and sometimes you'll be going into Hatha Yoga postures, you go into stretches, you feel yourself stretched here. And sometimes also, touch can be helpful in this. I'm just going to touch you if you don't mind for just a little bit. So sometimes a companion or someone who has some sense of the energy, because this is why we touch each other at times, right? The energy, the energy is touching the energy. It can be an ordinary person doing this, right? As the energy touches the energy, the center is open, right? And then if you want, you can bring your hand up a little bit more. Step, and you feel the energy where it's at. And it's all a purification process. And actually the empowerment that Lama Norla is going to be giving also focuses on this. And he focuses on it from the tradition, the Kagyu tradition with this, opening up the nadis in the body. Now I'm going up there. So sometimes touching the Muladhara chakra, as the energy moves there, it also comes to the front and opens that up, right? But sometimes taking our fingers and touching here, or having sometimes someone else's fingers, because sometimes being touched by your own fingers is almost the same as touching. The same as touching. So there's less differentiatedness. As if you were touching me here, I would know about it more than me touching me here, because there's more difference. You with me? So sometimes touch and 3 fingers here, and you can do 2 things. You can extend the energy down, and there's a bulb down towards the sexual center. Down. And then you can feel it. You'll feel it hit that place. And then you raise it up a bit. And so it comes up through the center. Can you feel that a bit? Up to the center. And you take it there. And you can raise your hand super gentle. You're not doing this with strength, but through subtle up to this little doorway here. The inner doorway. The energy cannot easily come through the central channel and may become reoriented and reorganized through preoccupation with fantasy and fantasy narratives. That's the first big thing there. And so the energy moves sideways and takes the person into phantasmagoria, which ultimately infuse fantasy elaboration and weaken the practice of the embodiment of luminosity. So the person lives in an erotic dream, becoming more dissociated and disembodied. Does that make sense to you? Easily happens. So sometimes you're going to have people come to you, because once you're in the Kundalini energy world, I'm not talking about publicity or have on your little card. How to spell it? No, out of nature, natural. People who are experiencing Kundalini difficulties will come to you. You with me? It happens totally naturally. Totally, completely naturally. And that's really cool. And when it happens naturally, and there's no culture and no context for this, it can be very, very difficult. It can be very, very difficult for children who have early awakening of the Kundalini in regards to the sexual realm. It can be very difficult because of the powers that are rising and things that people are seeing, you with me, that all happen naturally to this. There are phases, I'm going to run a little bit ahead in Kundalini, I'm not going to think, but there's phases when you start seeing animals moving through the things. You see animals. There's phases when you see people sometimes without clothes. There's fantasies, there's actual perceptions of people who are dying. You see them as dead. So there's lots of phenomena that come, which is gnosis. The actual Kundalini thing has to do with one thing alone. Gnosis, direct perception through our whole body. And it's when it starts happening and there's no preparation for it, then people think they're going mad, right? And then when we think we're going mad, we can start really going mad and become just filled with anxiety because it's so, so troublesome. Say yes if this means. So we're going to continue on. So the freedom of choice. I covered this a little before, but again. So the energy comes up here too. This is important. This starts becomes a power center here. And the power center, as the energy comes here, you'll start feeling it goes from sexuality and just raw aggression and starts feeling more like empowerment. I'm going to push it, Karen, just for a minute. It's like empowerment. You start feeling the power of the push. You follow me? You can feel yourself standing against phenomena. Not in an impotent, rage-like way, whining and screaming, but you start feeling the empowerment of this center is really, really useful. Say yes if that's making sense, huh? And without this center, and you can see how this is, there's a construction taking place to ultimately hold the heart center, where the power of the heart energy, with its generosity, its magnificence, is not unduly sacrificed unnecessarily in masochistic ways. You follow what I mean by that? Because as the power of this center becomes stronger, your own differentiatedness becomes stronger, who and what you are and where you're at, and you feel the power not only to stand with people, but to stand against them. Say yes if that makes sense to you. And to stand against people and situations without having rage, the earlier frame as your only access. So as it moves through this, a person may become more feisty, more challenging. Adolescence with even more power behind it. You with me? That is really, really good. Sometimes it goes through and goes right to the heart center. And people can be like sheep, cows, and no power to protect themselves or others. The power of the Kundalini and Gnosis is not just for ourselves, but for others. And one of the real qualities as it emerges is protection. That's why the empowerment, I'm infomercial also, Lama Norla's, this empowerment that he's giving, which I can't tell you I'm happy about. It's a very pragmatic empowerment. It's an empowerment of protection, of protecting body, protecting speech, protecting mind, protecting where you live, protecting the centers that they're open. And when the formulation of gnosis is really moving, then protection takes place. So you have the capacity not just to beg for people, you have a capacity of actually protecting situations and people who you know and love or don't know and love. You follow what I'm saying? And the institutions you belong to will also have that capacity of protection. The capacity of protecting the innocentia is a really indicator whether true gnosis is there or not. Do you follow what I'm saying? And not just a story of fools. Because this energy can go every place and any place. It doesn't care. It's the great mother. The more babies, the better. And how the babies work it, the more the merrier. Do you follow what I'm saying here? So, protection and the capacity of protection of yourself and others starts arising with this center.
Protection against what?
Demons, demonic powers, vicissitudes of life. So the empowerment that the Rinpoche will be giving has, I'm bouncing between these two things, is an empowerment that comes both from the medicine Buddha. It's actually often connected with the healing from the medicine Buddha, but also is connected to the Vajrakalaya. And the Vajrakalaya is the dagger of protection and the dissolving of demonic forces, which many traditions forget about and hope for the best. And they forego the necessity of protection of themselves and others. Hear no evil, see no evil, smell no evil.
And the demons are really dangerous if they become obscurations.
The demons are dangerous because that's what they are. They're to destroy human experience, and they to destroy. And obscurations, even if you know it, sure you've known dangerous moments, but if you don't have the power to dismantle, to undo that which is coming towards you, so what? And if you don't have traditions that protect you, so what? Yeah? Hello? It's B. It's a new phone. I don't know what to do. Can we just turn it off? Or yes, just turn it. It's a demon. The demons are coming. Yeah. And on one level, it's total goodness, right? On one level, everything is totally pure. And to know that will actually help you be fearless. Because on another level, there is evilness. There is the love, as Freud knows, the love of murder, the love of destroying, the love of killing, the love of torture. And so to hold that is wisdom. Having both eyes and your third eye open. To hold that is wisdom.
Can you repeat where the protection comes from?
From what protection?
From
The protection ultimately comes because the awareness has moved into this center of a power center, and you're embodying it, and you're using it, and you can feel the power, and you're embracing it, and you have the elements that help you do that, the cosmological elements. You have enough fire element, you have earth, you have fire element, you have earth element in your body. We're going to come back around this again when I go to the Freudian thing, because Freud also goes through the same things. So now, so protection, not incidental to our life, right? The doorway of the heart. So the next story is here. So now there's groundedness. There's the power of sexuality with its powerful resonance and charisma. And now there's the power of protection. Then the heart opens. The next door begins to open, and the ascending and expanding field of the Kundalini rises, begins to enter through the doorway of the heart. In this phase, the gross energy of the field becomes more refined, more sublimated, and more illuminated. This is the warrior here. This is warrior energy right here. This is a warrior. This is warrior energy. You know, there's Haruklas live here. The Haruklas, the victorious ones. Qigong masters live here. Qigong masters also live in the heart energy. Heart, mind, body, but it's a unified state. Ultimately it arises as a unified state. Our perceptual state without secondary process thinking, but one acts in directness. Either beneficence or beneficence in a fierce way to dissolve what has to be dissolved. In this phase, the gross energy field becomes more refined, sublimated, and illuminated. So the heart essence really is the opening of the heart. This is not always easy as it sounds, right? And often, there's a vast amount of pain. You think you're having heart attacks. It's like, and it's a stretch. As you guys know, you can feel this stretching. It's like there's some pictures of the line being opening the heart, right? The archetypical beast. And so that opens to the heart, bringing forth the vast body now, the luminous flesh. And when this starts taking place, then this is really where the source, this is where gnosis lives, right, in the inner heart, right? And so that moment, it really begins to open in directness. And so the body starts to become permeated both down and up with these nectarian, liquid-like states start to come through us that is actually now creating the Vajravas body. Say yes if that makes sense to you, right? You can feel it. And with this exquisite inner sensuousness begins to arise. So one of the signatures is this ongoing feeling of this exquisite inner sensuousness that is not climactic, okay? It's an ongoing, continuous, sensuous, self-soothing, comforting place. So the ascending energy moves through the heart, bringing forth the vast body, luminous flesh. The light radiates out within the body. So now the light's going down, the light's going up. The light itself is now opening all this up, and the light is now really moving in a more direct way as the great compassion. And this capacity of beginning to experience no longer in a solipsistic cognitive behavioral frame, but you begin to feel in a direct way the non-duality between you and this world. Now, I'm giving this in a linear frame. Does it happen linear? No, it does not. It jumps around. Boom, 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 boom. This is a way to make it somewhat clear. So, non-duality, the sense of oneness, starts to arise automatically. So luminosity begins to be felt, sensed, and known. And then these channels open up here from the heart that come into the eyes. The Gayatri opens, so the energy moves through the heart, through the eyes, and through the Brahmananda channel up here to the top of the head. And also the back opens up. So all this is opening. Then the column of light now begins to take its true form, both vertically and horizontally. The column of light now begins to take its spherical form of ascendance and relatedness. And also, it changes. What do they call the doctor's symbol? Heidi, what is it? What's it again? It has a caduceus type of quality. So sometimes it's not a straight light. It's more like a light that has all these, you can see into the light and has all these little crossovers and actually becomes, out of the ancient thing, the myth, the sign of healing. Because now the field is more naturally a healing field. You with me? And as the healing proceeds along, it'll be first of all often on a mnemonikaya level, right? Or in our minds become infused and become like, people become therapists or helpers or mothers and all this stuff, but they help. People start caretaking people, okay? On the mnemonikaya level. But then it also opens up on Sambhogakaya level, right? And Sambhogakaya, so the energies, the beatific energies come through you. You're with me, like Majustri, things like that, or whatever ones you want to call it. And then finally, Dharmakaya, where it just manifests spontaneously. Say yes if that's making sense, okay? So, the column of light, blah, blah. So in truth, taking a longer day, the sublimation, or bringing forth the energy of light, is now in full form and unfolding. Up to this point, and it can be years, sort of just creeping along with it. You know, it's intense. A lot of events happen. You learn a lot. It brings you into all kind of places. The Kundalini brings you in some of the darkest places possible, right? It really is training. So as the energy of the field becomes the heart essence, the sexual energy and energy field are no longer felt in conjunction. So as when the energy's here, there's a sexual component, there's an erotic component, but it's independent of desire. Below here, it's a function of desire, either your desire or the desire of the other. And more often than not, it's a function of desire of the other, okay? So at this point, as it rises up to here, you begin to feel sexuality without desire. Raise that if that makes sense to you. And you feel this powerful sexual energy that actually, perhaps for the first time, is for your own self in an intrinsic manner. And what begins to start to taking place is the non-climactic role of sexual energy in the whole story. It's not that climaxes are foreclosed, but there's a shift where just being in the sexual energy with the light is nourishing and supportive and strength. One has strength. And the sense of vulnerability begins to do what? Dissolve. That's why Kundalini is useful but tricky. The sense of vulnerability to others dissolves around desire. So as the energy moves up now into the heart chakra, the sexual component drops away, and what remains is a sublimated sensuousness. And in the Shaivite masters and also in the Dzogchen, some of them describe this inner sensuous state. Right? Everybody okay with this? Patrul Rinpoche, one of the great Dzogchen masters in the late early 20th century, 20th century, would describe this, and some of the others on there. So the luminous heart essence assimilates and metabolizes the sexual energy, thus bringing forth refined luminosity without desire, or we'll call it sexual gravitas. So the word kadig really comes forth here. Purity appears as the essential purity of the felt and perceived field. So one starts to see the purity of phenomena, even though at times, if it has demonic manifestations that have to be cut through, right? begin to see both at the same time. And the great compassion allows us to see both and to act with both perceptions. The purity reflects the luminosity, spacious, and unfixatedness of the experiential field, which also happens at this point, which is also enormously threatening. You begin to see the undeterminateness of phenomena, and the undeterminateness, the unfixatedness of phenomena around you. And as this indeterminate state starts to happen, it sounds great, because you actually start to feel potentiality being able to enter into indeterminate states, but the vast amount of the indeterminateness and total unpredictability out of the pseudo picture of causality begins to drop away. And that is a great challenge at the heart essence level. You guys follow what I'm saying? Say no if you're not. Indeterminate means there's no predictability in your life. What you thought was going to happen did not happen. What you knew was going to happen did not happen. And you didn't know it till after it had happened.
There's no causality.
In a certain way, at this level, the cheap explanation of causality, which works up to a point, is undercut. And then you begin to see life in a non-causal frame, which is the hallmark of Dzogchen. Because up to these issues also in Kazmi Shivam, there's a pseudo use of causality, and at a certain point, big fly. You don't think, you just think of manifestation and potentiality, and you're meeting manifestation. So here, the causal approach, do this, do better, and work it starts to dissolve, and it becomes perception itself. Is perception and action go together. Now back to the healing dimension. Then we're going to shift to psycho. Sorry to take so long. The healing dimension also arises in full manifestation. As the field deepens in intensity and breadth, the field begins not only to arise in oneself, but is also more easily brought forth in others. So, like many people here, you have the field of awakening, you've worked on it, you've had all these different good fortunes, and so as you live in the field of awareness, in a non-climactic way, the field of awareness, you begin to experience the field in others, but also it can help bring forth the field in others. So the field is held in intensity and in relaxation without effort or drivenness. The field is held in intensity and in relaxation without effort or drivenness. The field begins to be sensed, and the manifestation of the great perfection of love becomes more unbound in the physical world, and the divinity of appearance becomes more manifest. And I would say it's a givenness. It just starts manifesting. So during this phase of the opening of the vast body, the body of light forms in a container of light for the light. And this creates a protection of luminous flesh and bliss, as well as a support for the more effortless sustaining of the field. So now the field's holding us. Everybody together with this? Okay, we all know this. Now, we're now going to shift over. Sorry, I want to do more experiential. We'll do that next week. I want to now shift back to psychoanalytic thinking, okay? Because if you can find it, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So we're going to pause now, and we're going to go back to the beginning in terms of human development. Because one of the things we want to understand, we don't want to see things as supernatural, super allegocious. We don't want to put the supernatural spirituality frame on everything, right? Because it is natural. All this is totally natural. This is natural. That's why the great Dzogchen teachings, after someone described it as an eraser, it just erases everything before it. It's not that things before it aren't useful, but it erases the earlier traditions. Not that you don't practice them, but this is very natural. So let's go back to us as babies, bambinos, okay? Everybody here? This okay with you guys? Having a good time? So now the baby originally lives in the world prior to differentiation. The baby is an undifferentiated state, and even though research there's some differentiation, even in the beginning, the baby is undifferentiated with some differentiation now, right? All the new baby research, undifferentiated, but some differentiated. Mama, you know. So there's some recognition. So, but in a certain way, the baby is in a non-dual state. I call it baby gnosis. So there's no subject-object differentiation. Another word for this is primary narcissism, which is a great word. And you have to forget what other words means by narcissism. The baby's primary narcissism is not a preoccupation towards own self-referentialness versus others, but rather this encompassing experience of being within this field, undifferentiated oneness, at times in a beatific way. The longer the better. As the developmental process rises, as cognitive functions, brain functions begin to come into being, ego begins to be formed. And ego is a really good word, ego functions. Ego is not a bad word. If you did not have an ego, they'd have to carry you in here, lay you down, feed you intravenously, and you'd have no idea what's going on. So the undifferentiated field of self, the developmental process creates differentiatedness. There is a me and there is a you. So it creates the process of human relatedness. Even though we're indivisible, we begin to experience me and you-ness. So differentiation is a biodirectional process. It means it goes both ways, in which the mother and the baby or the caretaking person come into duality. Say yes. Doesn't this make sense? Me and you, and baby comes back, we go through all these little rapprochement phases. I can be by myself for a certain amount, and then I learn these little symbols that help me sustain that sense of undifferentiatedness. Transitional objects, give me my little teddy. Or all these symbolic pictures. So the baby differentiates from the mother within the undifferentiatedness, a relatedness between the two parts that were originally one become possible. And sublimation is trying to do this again, to bring me back with my highly differentiated ego, my highly differentiated mind, and my highly differentiated you and me world, or me and it world, and bring me back into an undifferentiated state of non-duality within duality, and duality within non-duality. That really is the ultimate goal of sublimation. Say yes if you're understanding that. So we're going to continue on with this. The original experience, and we all have flashbacks to the original experience of undifferentiated oneness, or what we call primary process. And primary process is simply some form of knowing without concepts. It's knowing more metaphorically, or more knowing in a felt sense of knowing, but not necessarily logic. Primary process. And the unconscious here is the unmediated experience of being in the world. There's no mediation. There's no concepts. There's no thoughts. There's no periods. The language is just unmediated knowingness. So the original experience of undifferentiated oneness, primary process, and unconscious. So we're changing these worlds a little bit. Or the distinction, the difference of subjectivity and objectivity, duality. So we return to the primary unity. We return to this primary unity when? In creativity, right? Singing. We heard that song this morning. creativity, whatever the creativity, it creates undifferentiated oneness. It creates states of being arises. Love, you don't hear all these stupid talks. Love itself creates undifferentiated oneness. You and I are indivisible, but there is a you and I. Love does this. All this is natural. And finally, spiritual experience. For instance, or awareness experience, a better word. When we start feeling timeless awareness in time, right? That moment, we're undifferentiated in time. And all this is completely natural. Just watch a happy child play. Or watch yourself when you're having a good day or when you're having a really very bad day. Because bad days can equally throw us into these states. Paradoxical states. Linking. Sublimation is a linking process. You're trying to link all the things you would forego. That's why in the great Dzogchen traditions, all these things are or wisdom. Hatred, love, greediness is actually doorways into wisdom, right? Because you're integrating them through the perception of awareness. Say yes if that's making sense. So this is not ethical in that sense. The ethics is a powerful ethics of direct perception. So sublimation is a process of binding and linking these different modes of experiencing reality. The unity of the undifferentiated. This is the return to the original oneness from a higher level of maturity. So this brings us back to that talk we gave about 3 weeks ago, right? When we had what? One knower and two modes of knowing. Raise your hands if you remember that. We'll do that again. One knower, and I have two modes of knowing. And I'm integrating my knowing with my mind in the knowing of awareness, which is so direct. But I can will that, but it's the process that does it, is what we're describing as the Kundalini process, where I start to have the unity of my mind is now resting in the sea of primarily awareness. So I'm both differentiated and undifferentiated. Even right now, I can be undifferentiated and differentiated. Now that, because some people come into this world with a lot of primary narcissism. And a lot of those people find their ways into seminars like this. They have a lot of primary narcissism. They come in a very direct perception, non-dualistic, undifferentiated state. They can be extremely bright. Often they're very bright. But sometimes their mind doesn't quite function like the person who did not experience so much primary narcissism and became a great lawyer at the age of 2. Analytic mind, okay. So there is this tension between primary narcissism and something called secondary narcissism. You with me? Or between primary narcissism and our minds. So, and some people come in with their very strong minds. They left the primary narcissism thing, and then suddenly something happens to them, either something very good or something very terrible, and they fall into a vast sea of loss. And then the yearning of primary narcissism arises again. And those are the venues for the awakening of Kundalini Shakti. Say yes if that's making sense to you.
Yes.
And you can find yourself in that show someplace at different times, right? Some people with primary narcissism, they're very bright. Their mind is bright, but some of the little concrete operations of that mind don't work very well. A lot of people called learning disabilities, not all of them, have this phenomena. They're brilliant. And certain aspects of the brain, you will see it on the brain, I'm sure, but the brain functions on the secondary level are bypassed because they use intuition all the time. And sometimes they're right. But when it comes to scholastic world, they have to, so they try and train themselves to really have good secondary narcissistic features and things, and they don't do so good. If they rely really on what they have, they do a lot better. You don't have to believe any of this, but a lot depends on a person's talent. Say yes if this is making sense for me. So, let's continue on if we're in the same boat here. So in sublimation is a process of binding and linking these two modes of experiencing reality to the unity of the undifferentiated. It's also binding and linking drives. When sexuality is left out of the story, as often traditions try to do, then it becomes the shadow side of the story. You with me? Or whatever we don't integrate becomes the shadow side, right? Say yes if this is really making sense. Aggression, no aggression, no aggression. You foreclose all aggression, you will have rage. So sublimation is a linkage, what we call meaning, or the transmutation of sublimation reveals an unfolding into the undifferentiated elements of oneness of the instinctual life with all the awareness experiences. And oneness stays alive as connection. Oneness, the desire for oneness, what later Freud called eros, because he started changing his entire theories around. He gave up, he started shifting from the sexual instinct being primary and went into eros, which was the life force itself near the end of his life. Eros and thanatos, the desire to be connected and the desire to disconnect everything. Then Bion came along and took the idea of the disconnectedness and the fragmentedness and the destruction of mind and body, which mental illness does to people, you with me? Or cultural illness does for people, and destroys all connectedness. So the battle at this point is eros thanatos. No. So linking is an event of sublimation. And eros is the center of sublimation, binding and linking. And eros, love, is oneness. So we're bringing all this into this oneness, all these primary, as we go through these different centers, that's all being integrated. And the very integration actually propels the light to become stronger. Or as Lama Torshan one day was describing, the human being's body, I mentioned this before, but I like it, is such a powerful body. It has such drives to it, such primitiveness to it, all these elements. And it is the body, this type of body, that Devas envy, because it is the body of realization one life. Because in fact, you're dealing with all these powers, vast intensity, and you really want to have all this intensity. You want to have the hormones that do it. You with me? That and you want to learn how to hold it, metabolize it, and not just climax from one event to the other, compulsively climaxing. One paper, two papers, this task, that task, whatever the climax. So the climax sequence, we went through this a lot last time, begins to organize most of people's lives. So now I'm going to go to Winnicott, who talks about this. We're still awake right now? Everybody still here? Yes. Yes. Were you here last week?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
In that frame where we come in undifferentiated, and there's a natural movement
To differentiation.
differentiate,
If we're lucky.
would it be fair to say that the parenting function, one of its main purposes is to hold that undifferentiated state so that we can carry as much of that along with us as we go through the differentiation?
That's why some of us, when we see babies, we don't quite know what to do. We just don't quite know what to do. We look at them, we like them, but we just don't know what to do with this baby. A lot of the people with maternal instincts don't understand this. But some of us with less maternal instincts, because the baby is in that state. And to relate to that state requires its own undifferentiatedness of our personality. And to mirror that back simultaneously, well said, really well said, and mirroring back the growing edge of the ego function. So if we go too far with the growing edge, there'll be no communication whatsoever, because the communication is primarily for the undifferentiatedness. The communication is primarily through undifferentiatedness. In fact, in the highest levels of our life, most of the communication is through the undifferentiatedness of our experience, and the cognitions elaborate that. But nowadays we think it's primarily through cognition, and that's why we have robot world coming over, and we're more and more like little robots. Who says this? St. Thomas Aquinas says this. And the medieval mystics understood that they had the same play. There is this knowingness, which is being itself, the identity, and is so direct. So if you and I are talking right now, the only reason why you and I are understanding this level is because we're in some degree of undifferentiated oneness already. Is that making sense? And also Jacques Maritain, a very famous Thomistic person, calls it co-natural knowledge. And then the phenomenologists, Husserl, Heidegger, go into the same thing. Dzogchen does the same thing. Unless we're in awareness and there's this indivisibility between us, then our mind, we can talk about it, but my life with you will be entirely informational. Everything I say will be information. What you say to me will be information. And love will not come into fruition. Isn't that pretty interesting and wild? Okay? Let me just one more. So I want to talk a little bit about Winnicott today. So we're taking the same thing, now we're going to a Winnicottian point of view. We won't be doing this anymore, but I want to get through with this. Winnicott's approach to sublimation again begins with the mother-child matrix. You know? Just like death ends with the mother-child matrix. If the door opens, and then they describe the child leaps into the mother. You with me? And again, Lama Torchin's so great on this, and I'm playing the infomercial, playing this on Saturdays, where we make a lot of big deal, the vicissitudes of dying, you know? The challenges, the test, like its own last judgment. Catch the light, don't worry about the sound, it's really, but rather, this is so much more natural, because in fact, the mother is there throughout her entire life, right? Being itself. And so the moment of death, that openness, that space, meets us, right? You follow that? Say yes if that makes sense. So, Winnicott approaches sublimation with the mother-child matrix, and he relates sublimation to the location of cultural experience. So he's saying much of cultural experience, much of learning, much of art, all this stuff is transitional. And to be in transitional space is really to live the life of perception and the capacity to hold paradoxes, which is creativity. It has a high survival value. So play is not a matter of inner psychic reality. So I think play is just inner psychic reality. Nothing much will happen for me in this world in a creative way. It'll be more of a solipsistic play. And neither is it just external reality. It's not just being locked into the external. It's this sublime studying both the internal and external. And I think Jeff is actually thinking about doing some neuropsychology studies on exactly this point right here, on the inner aspect of the brain, the internal, matching with the external. That would be really cool. Okay. So, the transitional object is a symbol of union of the mother and the baby. And cultural reality, when you're really in culture itself, it's an extension of the play. So the space is the space of creativity, the space of awareness, the space where the self emerges. So when it comes to sublimation, space is really important. So even if we feel space right now, this evocation of space and having space, the Kundalini creates space in the body, in the mind. Sublimation is union, and also it's a transformation of primitive instincts within this context of psyche. The transitional object symbolizes a separation that is not quite a separation, but a form of union. Sublimation leads to the union of resonance. That's a Winnicottian statement. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Sublimation leads to the union of resonance. The point of the initiation of the separateness can be the point where differentiation occurs. So as soon as I'm initiated into, and sometimes some people have remembrance when they first realize that they were an individual. Sometimes we do that in hypnosis. You can feel that separateness dawning. It is the unitary field that undergoes differentiation. The unitary field undergoes differentiation. So all this is taking place in a unitary field. Freud was still talking about this, Winnicott talked about this, and the analyst that writes most about this and the most exquisite is Hans Lowell, a truly great master of this topic. Is this spirituality or is this psychoanalysis? Is this psychoanalysis or is this natural? So the unitary field undergoes differentiation. And so from this non-dual arises duality. There's a restoration of unity, a differentiated unity. Great phrase, differentiated unity, oneness and manyness. Me and you, indivisible. I'm going over this because I feel when I understand this, as the Dzogchen masters like Longchenpa says, with understanding helps you see what's there. It is pointing out instructions and it's not so mystified or so deep down. This is not deep down phenomena. As soon as you're going deep, you're going to get lost. This captures separateness in the act of uniting and the unity in the act of separating. Say yes if you guys are understanding this. Now, transitional phenomena has no climax. And this distinguishes transitional phenomena and transitional states from phenomena that have instinctual backing and the force of discharge, where the orgasmic element plays an essential part and where satisfactions are closely linked to climax. So to put this in Tantra terms, sexuality, very perfect way of looking at stimulation becoming so intense that it has to be discharged. And then from discharge comes nirvana. So you have a sensation-orientedness to everything. Sensation. With me? And the best way, they say, is not even to have any desire, just live in cessation. That's just nothingness. It's a nihilistic term frame. But typically, say sexuality, stimulation, discharge, right? Sexuality in the transitional phase is ongoing continuity of sensuousness without discharge. Now, that's one thing, but you can start to look at many, many, many phenomena like feelings and affects. When whatever is experienced in the transitional state, and Skip gave a beautiful example last week, when we're living in the transitional state, climax is no longer the goal. Endpoint is no longer, so the ongoing continuity of beingness is there. Or it says in that great song, the song of awareness, right? That one. There's no target. There's no goal. You guys remember that? You guys following this a bit? Winnicott's distinction between non-climactic phenomena and climactic phenomena is important for understanding the sublimatory process. Discharge of stimulation is the frame of instinctual, often emotional, physical, sexual drives. Drive discharge, even emotion drive discharge. Non-climactic phenomena belongs to the relational experience of relating to persons. So you have two different frames of, so motivation, and you can imply these different motivation things fit for different people. For some people, it is a discharge system, right? Some people, you watch people having a lot of emotional dysregulation, to use that language. That's a discharge drama. Discharge, 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 discharge. Back up, discharge, discharge. Whatever it is, there is no, that transitional space, the self-soothing function is foreclosed for that person. And that is living in a realm of torture. And there is no ongoing of continuity. There is no bonding that takes place with that. When you simply have a discharge frame, it actually has predator qualities to it. I'm not talking about mean sense of predator qualities, but one's looking for discharge most of the time and is not quite in the human realm like they can be. Is that too strong a phrase? Let's see. So Winnicott, and so, for instance, the relatedness is Kohut. So for Winnicott and these people, that being a transitional object, or being the self-object and being able to hold relational ongoingness is what really being a human being is. The great compassion is being able to hold ongoing continuity of experience and helping people hold that experience for yourself and others. Say yes if you're understanding that. But if you're in a discharge mode, it's then caretaking becomes an endless burden and you can't stand it, because the tension gets too much. Sublimatoriness allows us to metabolize tension. The ongoing tension of a sublimatory state, of the Kundalini state, is tension. There's always tension. There's always fire. There's always aliveness. Aliveness is tension. Inorganic is dead. The Dharmakaya is alive. The Dharmakaya is not dead space. It's not a thing. Winnicott suggests that the relatedness, and these are all his words, is comparable to a kind of electricity. You know that one? Vibrations, waves, oscillations, magnetic fields. It's not like discharge phenomena. And Winnicott attributes this feature to the phenomena of play, the play area having infinite variability as compared to relatively stereotyped discharge phenomena. Now, if you watch a kid play, there'll be discharge within the play. Sword fighting kills. Or in our own play, you're playing tennis. Pop, 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 victory. But it's different. Everything is taking place within the flow of the ongoing continuity of being. It is not fragmented. Are you guys getting something from this right now? Yes?
You said metabolization.
Yes?
That everything is taken as part of the flow.
Yes. The
You
part,
say metabolize, I don't quite
yeah.
see
The
that as a
the
positive.
power of metabolization is both bodily and psyche. And as even the research in trauma shows by what's his name up in Boston, Vanderkal, if you're in an awareness state, not witness conscious, but you're in the awareness state, there's less probability you're going to be damaged. And your mind, because you're able to metabolize experience. And we metabolize experience, that's why experiential therapy metabolizes experience through experience and not just through mind.
So in this frame, see it as the ongoing continuity of being. That's metabolizing.
Yes, or because I can metabolize, I have more of a sense of ongoing continuity of being. When I can't metabolize something, I'm going to start fragmenting. I'm either going to leave, I'm going to run, I'm going to get exhausted, but one of the psychosomatic phenomena is going to take place for me when I can't metabolize. Something is going to happen. And I'm either going to try and bypass it and forget about it, or I have to spend some time really reliving it and re-experiencing it to metabolize. Metabolization is the great power of awareness. And the great power of the Kundalini Shakti that's alive, and the gift of the awakened awareness is its metabolization power. And with it we can metabolize.
But you can also bear the intensity.
And you bear the intensity. You live with intensity because the light is intense. You live with the fire element a lot. Almost done. Almost done. Okay, but okay. I'm going to skip Freud right now, and we'll pick Freud up again next week again. So let's just sit. Let's form a geometry right now, okay? Let's form a geometry. But to me, to be able to hold this understanding helps us know where we want to go, what we want to do. through intensity. Feeling a victim does not help us metabolize experience. The problem with being a victim, being defeated is not being a victim. Warriors are defeated. They know it when they're going down. But being a victim stops us from the capacity of metabolizing what has to be metabolized, what is being manifested by awareness right now in an indeterminate way in my life. One of the problems sometimes, sorry to rattle, one of the problems when we pose karma on everything, karma is about as understood. So we impose causality on stuff. You with me? And and then we take out of this pseudo imposition of causality, we take away the indeterminateness of life. You with me? So every bad thing, I deserve it because I did it. That gives our little superego some kind of fucked up comfort. You with me? But it's not liberating in what this world really is, which is this indeterminate, unfolding, unceasing, unpredictable manifestation of everything and anything in its divinity at the same time, simultaneously.
Rudy,
Yes,
I have one question
yes.
for you.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Help me with this because I can't tell if I'm trying to hold on to
Okay.
something or whether there's something true in this.
And this is just an opinion floating around, by the way.
Well, here's the good. In the way you talked about play, right, and there can be, seems to me there can be a build-up and a discharge, obviously within tennis. There's a larger container of the game and
Yes.
just the fun of it all, and it's not really necessarily
A
about winning.
trifecta, the horse winning, 3.
Which,
Yeah.
something like, yeah. But this transitional object, this transitional space
Phase.
that has the quality of, for me, has the quality of being large enough to hold the whole game.
Yes.
Each climax.
Each climax.
Doesn't is it different really fundamentally necessarily between build-up orgasm and unity? It seems to me there's something about build-up orgasm that also strengthens the space. It doesn't just...
Yeah. I think what you're pointing out is the view. And if I don't have the view, and if I have a spacious view of transitional space, events will take place, but the space that I'm in is a non-climactic experience for me. There may be climaxes taking place. That horse won for the first time in 38 years. Fantastic. And you feel happiness. But you are remaining in an ongoing continuity of being with pleasure. But it's different than being on the back of that horse without being in the space of holding the awareness state.
Like the great story from last week, being in the battlefield.
Yes.
I mean, I don't have any idea what you're probably experiencing, except there's a certain instinct that's like this.
Yes. He was in that space, and you described it, Helen described it so exquisitely, and he was moving through it. Play is not always fun. Play is illudere. Play is an illusionary state. By illusion, a la Winnicott, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but it means that you're feeling the creative potential in that moment completely. That is why, and I'm glad you bring it, we all bring into being itself. Being just doesn't manifest stuff. But when you're raising that question, and Helen shared that story, and was coming back, and something is being created right now, that is a creative moment of consciousness.
Unborn, you feel the unborn children or destinies in this movement.
Potentialities in this room, unborn children, and some child in this way, this whatever this is being brought forth, comes to life with this understanding, which is both knowledge and being at the same time, because being and knowledge are identical. And when you understand that being and knowledge are identical, then everything is, even as it disappears back into primordial awareness. It is. It just is. And then it disappears. It just is.
And what we're doing right now is metabolizing both of those experiences into the ongoing continuity of being of us.
Right. Yes. With an understanding that is not of mind alone, but is awareness itself. So death with this way of holding this is a non-climactic state. It doesn't say it's not important, doesn't say it's not sad, doesn't say it's not happy, but it's non-climactic.
That's what Baba told you
Yeah.
was behind the screen.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And also the pulsations we feel. This is not deadness. The pulsations, the aliveness is not climactic. It's like almost climactic, but not quite climactic. It arises, and then it's assimilated. It arises, and it's assimilated. It arises, and it's assimilated. It's arising, and it's assimilated. Arising, and it's assimilated. And with that, then there's more power of the Shakti and the energy, and more light. And for me, that is the process of realization as a normal human being. Right there. Thank you guys. See you all next week. Hot. And really think about doing the thing with Lama Norla. The second day is Mahamudra instructions that are very clear, because you know the kayas can be described in lots of different ways. Kala Rinpoche describes them in the most simple way, and it's the most direct transmission of the Mahamudra. And again, it's the lineage is right there. And the day before that is this empowerment of protection that's really, really a direct thing. It's often done in Tibet. It's not done here. It's a little strange, but it's very, very powerful. And ultimately it does deal with karma. It goes that far that it goes into dissolving karma. So I think it's really a total privilege. But hearing about it is not really just doing it. Thank you guys. See you later.
Can I say something about our morning?
Yeah, the morning thing, how's it going?
If anybody is not joining us because of Skype phobia or computer phobia, so Dan and Kathy and I are going to give one-on-one service. Just call us and we will walk you through.
Oh my God, I think,
Several people.
oh great.
Do that at your own risk.
Can I come? Please, please.
Seriously, there are several people who are interested, but they're afraid of Skype. We will take
I'm one.
I would be quiet, but he's a light sleeper.
I didn't need all the crap that was in it. I tried to divide it into two bags, and then I ended up carrying the two bags because I need all the crap that's in it. I got 3 inhalers. I've got my money. I've got,
How many lipsticks?
2. But I mean, those are light. If I could just carry that, and a very, very small little brush. So I mean,
Negra tried to tell me that I should be traveling to my Florida house with just a little handbag.
shit.
And I spit out and I thought, well, you don't have a lipstick. You don't carry 2 computers. They have your makeup case.
He's a man.
I go with every outfit.
Right. You're a man. Because my response is he has all kinds of ideas. He's European. They wear the same thing over 10,000 times. No, it's true.
No, he smells pretty clean.
I know, I'm sure he bathes. But they do have him.